set forth in his testimony on her behalf, although he was not able and did not contend that she has experience in budget, accounting, or finance. I thank the Chair and would yield the floor.
Mr. President. Senator from Maryland is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, sometime today we're going to get back to the SBIR bill, the bill that deals with helping our small businesses with innovation and growth so we can create more jobs and continue to lead the world in innovation so that we can win that international competition. The President talks about we need to do that by out-educating, out-innovating, and out-building our competitors. And part of that is helping our small business community with innovation. And the bill that is on the floor, the authorization of the SBIR program, helps small, innovative companies in order to create jobs and help America grow. I take this time, though, to urge my colleagues to reject all of the amendments that may be offered that would take away from the Environmental Protection Agency their ability to enforce our Clean Air Act. I say that because I truly believe, and I think most people believe, and it's been proven over history, that we can have a clean environment and we can grow our economy. In fact, I think if we don't have a clean environment, it's going to be more difficult for us to grow our economy. We need to do what's right for the people of this nation as it relates to their public health. The Clean Air Act has been one of the most important bills to protect the public health of the people of this nation. Carbon emissions are pollution. They are polluting our environment. They are causing respiratory ailments. They are making it more difficult for people who have respiratory illness to be able to breathe. We have children with asthma that are directly affected by the quality of the air that they breathe. It's our responsibility to take care of our children. It's our responsibility to make sure that they have clean air. The Clean Air Act has helped us deal with those needs. We want the enforcement of the Clean Air Act to be based upon science, not the political winds here in Washington. We want the scientists to tell us what we can do to protect our public health. And that's what the Clean Air Act and its enforcement is about. And it is being done in a way that allows our economy to grow. There are some here who say, well, this is just a temporary, or some of these amendments are just a temporary holdback from what EPA can do to enforce our laws by putting a moratorium on enforcement. Well, we all know what happens with moratoriums. We don't know whether we'll ever get beyond those short-term delays. We don't want to go down that path. And, Mr. President, what do you do if you're a business and you're trying to do what's right with the investments of your company to comply with the Clean Air Act? And now you're being told, well, maybe those rules will change. How do you make the necessary investments in your company without knowing that the ground rules are the ground rules? Let's not go down that path. That would be the wrong way to go. Let me just give my example of my own state of Maryland, where we have seen that a clean environment is good for our economy. In 2007, the Maryland legislature passed the Healthy Air Act. And let me tell you something, Mr. President, since the creation of that bill, it created thousands of jobs. It created more opportunity for the people of Maryland. Constellation Energy's invested $1 billion in compliance with the 2007 Healthy Air Act, reducing its SO2 SOx emissions by 85% and mercury by 80%. We have seen in our state of Maryland that the Healthy Air Act created jobs and provided healthier air for the people of Maryland. And let me tell you something, air knows no boundary. We've helped our surrounding states. Problem is the people of Maryland are downwind from other states that we wish were making the same type of commitments that we're making in Maryland. Let's at least maintain the standards of the Clean Air Act. This is the wrong bill to consider this issue anyway. Remember, I started by saying that we'll be taking up the small business bill to help our small business communities with innovation, SBIR, innovative research. That's the bill we're on. And yet my colleagues want to attach to this bill amendments that would restrict the Environmental Protection Agency from doing its responsibility on behalf of the public to protect our clean air. Let me just give you by way of example, we tried this. You know, the EPA is the cop on the beat to make sure that polluters don't pollute our air. We used to have, but we one time had the cop on the beat for the financial markets. And we sort of eased that up because we said we needed to do that for businesses. And what happened is we had a financial meltdown. Well, we don't want to go down the same path on protecting the public health of the people of this nation by removing the cop on the beat. That would be the wrong thing to do. So I urge my colleagues to reject those types of amendments. And let me tell you something. The public gets this. 7 out of 10 Americans want us to enforce our Clean Air Act against the polluters. 7 out of 10 Americans do not want us to weaken the laws of this country that protect the public health of the people of America. We can't afford to turn the clock back on our clean air policies, and we cannot turn our clock back on the health of our citizens. I urge my colleagues to reject each and every one of these amendments that may be offered that would restrict the enforcement of the Clean Air Act against the polluters of America. Let's speak out for our children. Let's speak out for clean air. Let's speak out for our future. And let's speak out for our economic growth, which very much depends upon a clean environment. And with that, Mr. President, I would suggest the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Awaiting further remarks from senators during this period of morning business, we heard Senator Sessions just before Senator Carson commenting on the Senate Budget Committee's scheduled vote today on the nomination of Heather Higginbotham to be the Deputy Director of the Office of Management and Budget. She was nominated to the position 2 months ago, and as you heard Senator Sessions say, he is opposed to the nomination as fellow Republicans have raised concerns about her budget experience and training. Should she be approved in committee, she'll face a vote in the full Senate. And he also talked about the situation in Libya. Reuters news service revealed yesterday that President Obama has okayed the use of covert military help for the opposition forces in Libya. That's the lead story in many newspapers today. This morning, Defense Secretary Robert Gates and Joint Chiefs Chair Admiral Mike Mullen are testifying for a second day on Capitol Hill about military operations in Libya. Yesterday, they were joined by Secretary of State Clinton in briefings to the House and Senate. And today, they are speaking before the House Armed Services Committee. You can see that right now on C-SPAN 3. It got underway at 9:30 this morning. Morning business, general speeches in the Senate until this afternoon when they're expected to return to debate on small business legislation. This morning, many senators are away in New York for the funeral of former New York Congresswoman and vice presidential candidate Geraldine Ferraro, former President Bill Clinton, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and former Vice President Walter Mondale are among the mourners at Geraldine Ferraro's funeral in New York City. The former Democratic Congresswoman was Mr. Mondale's running mate in 1984, the first woman to run for vice president on a major party ticket. She died of blood cancer Saturday at the age of 75. While this quorum call continues on the Senate floor, we'll return to the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee hearing this morning. They're investigating allegations that Homeland Security's political appointees are stonewalling Freedom of Information Act requests. Live coverage here on C-SPAN 2 now.
Determination of the Office of the General Counsel that was part of the deliberative process rather than a final decision. But as I said, I wasn't involved in this redaction.
What about nope, they entirely changed our response, spoke with Jordan, and he is going to confer with OGC. Would that be a B-5 exemption?
Sir, that also is part of the FOIA request from the Associated Press. I was not part of the process, but I do know the underlying facts in this circumstance. The Office of the Secretary had initially made some recommendations to modify our boilerplate FOIA responses to make them more streamlined, and they did not understand that indeed several of the paragraphs were required by law. And therefore, after consulting with the Office of the General Counsel, we decided to use the same standards. So therefore, that was indeed a pre-decisional document because we did not make the changes that were recommended by the Office of the Secretary. So in that case, again, I did not make the determination, but I think a B-5 exemption would be appropriate.
You do think a B-5 exemption would be appropriate for the phrase, they entirely change our response, spoke with Jordan, and he is going to confer with OGC?
In this factual circumstance, that's because the response indeed was not changed.
Well, for those that may not be familiar, what is the process if you are redacting in an impermissible way? Who gets to review that? I mean, how do we know what we don't know? If you're redacting something, who gets to decide whether or not the redaction was appropriate or not?
As in my written testimony, I detail the entire FOIA process, including the possibility of consulting with counsel. And then once the requester receives the response, they have several alternative appeal options, an administrative appeal, and also going to court.
I can't see edits. Are they useful? Now, why would that be a B-5 exemption?
I'm sorry, sir. I am concerned about the overuse of B-5 in this department. Mr. Fong and I have discussed it, and we're going to look at a systemic solution to the issues that the Inspector General raised with regard to B-5.
We know it was coming. They are trying to substantially edit our letters. Why is that a B-5 exemption?
Sir, again, I do not have knowledge of the FOIA processing for this element, so I'm sorry, I won't be able to continue to answer these questions.
Would you agree with me that that's not an appropriate use of the B-5 exemption?
Again, sir, this was not my processing.
The gentleman's time has expired. Now we go to the distinguished gentleman from Illinois for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And, you know, since I sit next to the other gentleman from Illinois, I just wasn't certain. But since both Ms. Callahan and Mr. Fong have testified that neither are aware of any political interference in responding to FOIA requests, I'm going to yield the balance of my time to the ranking member, Mr. Cummings.
I want you to, thank you very much. I thank the gentleman for yielding. Ms. Callahan, I want you to, you know, first of all, I think you admit, and the IG will agree, that the system, things are not perfect. By the way, none of our officers are perfect. We've got great people, but they're not perfect. And I am concerned about this, you know, as the IG was concerned. He said his recommendation number 5, it says to recommend the Secretary that the Secretary issue written guidance to the Department on the President's reiteration, embarrassment, abstract fears, and the exposure of failure are not grounds to exempt information under the FOIA. And you just said that you and Mr. Fong were working on addressing the issue of exemption number 5. Tell me what you are planning to do. I mean, what do you see? You expressed concerns. You said you're trying to do some things. How do you address that? Because one of my colleagues on the other side said, how do we go forward?
Yes.
Now, and I got to tell you, when you said that you all had reduced by 90%, the backlog, 80, whatever, 80%. Let me tell you something. That's phenomenal. Now, but we want to do even better. This president has said he wants to do better, and I want you to address that issue.
Sir, I want to do better as well. And one way with regard to this identification of B5 using in the department, as I said, I had not identified this as a systemic problem until the Inspector General brought it to my attention. Mr. Fong and I have not had a chance to do a thorough plan, but I think it obviously is going to look at the specific elements of B5, how it's being applied, and also obviously training and materials and education will help to make sure that when exemption B5 is being used, it's being used appropriately, and it should not be used for embarrassment purposes and so on. So I completely concur with that.
Now, how long have you been in your position, Ms. Callahan?
2 years, sir.
Were you in that department before then?
No, sir. I was in the private sector.
Well, let me ask you this. You referred back to 2006. You referred back to 2006 2 or 3 times.
Yes, sir.
And I was just looking at some guidelines, FOIA section of DHS Cabinet Report to the White House.
Yes, sir.
Dated August 4th, 2006. And it talks about, it says, select FOIA requests for submission if one of the following criteria is met. It says, one is the FOIA request is for congressional correspondence. The FOIA request is from a member of Congress. The FOIA request is from a member of the media. That's been a policy since 2006? Without
change, yes, sir.
And when you came in and you're trying to do this more transparency, have an effort to make things more transparent, I take it that you go back and you review these kinds of things so you know what the guidelines are?
I did, sir, and I relied heavily on my career FOIA professionals with this regard. We looked at the 2006 guidance, decided to issue it as a memorandum from me to show its importance, but also added some ministerial and formatting elements to it to be, quite frankly, more professional and consistent with how we refer to things. But the substance of the submission guidelines have not changed since 2006.
So, in other words, there was nothing in between 2006 and when you came in?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
So that's what you had to go back to?
Yes, sir. So
is it safe to say that during the latter, I guess the Bush years, President Bush's years, 2006 through 2008, that these were the guidelines, is that right?
That is correct, sir, and they remain essentially the guidelines today.
I see. Now, Mr. Fong, the IG made some complaints about your department, such as the department's commitment to producing documents is in question. DHS assertions about resources dedicated to complying with document productions. Our suspect made a number of allegations. And since you are not going to be here to answer those, but you're familiar with them, I think it would benefit the entire committee for us to know what your response is to those, because they were rather serious.
So, to clarify, you may have inadvertently referred to the Inspector General.
I meant the Inspector General. I apologize.
You meant the...
I'd ask a gentleman have an additional 1 minute. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. Talking about the Republican staff report. I'm sorry.
Yes, thank you for giving me an opportunity to respond. I have not had an opportunity to read the entire report in depth, but I did carefully review the allegations made concerning attorneys in my office, including career attorneys who have worked there with great success for some time. I confess that when I first saw the section headings, my initial reaction was one of concern because, as you indicate, they make very serious allegations about lawyers I know well. And I take very seriously, as I should, any allegation of wrongdoing.
Chair a subcommittee of the Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee that focuses on contracting oversight. I can stand here with certainty and tell my colleagues in America and Missourians that contracting problems in the federal government are substantial, and they're expensive, and they have to be fixed. And while we are all focused right now on trying to make the federal government spend less money and be more efficient, there are times that contracting problems have significant consequences beyond that of money being misspent or wasted. Sometimes contracting problems have human consequences. And examples would be some of our soldiers that were electrocuted because of substandard contracting work as it relates to showers in Iraq when they were standing up for us in a military conflict. Last summer, a problem surfaced relating to Arlington National Cemetery, and this was a contracting problem. And so last summer, my subcommittee held a hearing on the contracting incompetence at Arlington and what the consequences of that incompetence were. And heartbreaking as it is, we learned that because of mismanagement of contracts at Arlington, graves had been misidentified, remains had been buried someplace other than where families had been told they had been buried. And obviously, this is a breathtaking revelation when you think about what Arlington National Cemetery means to the veterans of this country and to our nation. It is sacred ground. It is the kind of place that America needs to know is being run well, and that the remains of our heroes are being handled with the utmost deference, respect, dignity, and certainly Americans have the right to know that we are burying our heroes exactly where their families are told they are being buried. In the committee hearing last summer, I estimated at that point in time, based on what we knew at that time, that as many as 6,600 graves had been misidentified. The Army responded quickly and forcefully, and I do want to recognize that Catherine Condon, the Executive Director of the Army National Cemeteries Program, and Pat Hallinan, the Superintendent of Arlington National Cemetery, have been responsive and I think have been working hard to clean up this mess. However, we now have recent reports that indicate that maybe I underestimated the significance of this problem, and maybe this problem is much larger than I even anticipated. At the time when I used those numbers, people seemed to think that I was exaggerating. Well, we introduced a bill to make sure that there is accountability as it relates to Arlington, and along with a number of co-sponsors, including Senator Brown, who is the ranking member of the committee at the time, along with Senator Collins and Senator Burr and Senator Lieberman, we introduced a bill that would aim at accountability at Arlington, require some reporting to us in 9 months, require that the Secretary of Army continue to be held accountable on this huge, huge problem at Arlington National Cemetery. But I think now is time that we get some interim information, because information has now surfaced that potentially many more graves have been mishandled. We now know there's a criminal investigation because we had 8 urns discovered in one gravesite last fall as we were working on this legislation. And while I'm glad the legislation has become law, that doesn't change the urgency of the situation. So I have today written to the Secretary of the Army, Secretary McHugh, and I have asked for immediate information on an interim basis about what in fact has happened to clean up this mess at Arlington. Where are they in the process, and what is the truth about graves that have been identified, have not been identified, and potentially never will be identified? I have asked the following information of Secretary Hugh. First, I want to know the number of grave sites that have been physically examined to identify the remains that are there. I want to know how many grave sites have been determined to be incorrectly identified, labeled or occupied, and the methodology that's been used to make that determination. I want to know immediately how many families have been contacted regarding problems with the grave sites and the number of families that have requested that those grave sites be physically examined. I want to know what the procedure is for contacting the families regarding actual or potential problems with the grave sites and how these procedures have been implemented since our hearing last July. I want to know from the Army how will they be able to correctly identify all grave sites by the end of the year and the estimated costs and time required to complete an examination of that nature. I have asked the Secretary of the Army to respond to this letter in a week because I am asking for what progress they've made. This is not something that we can sweep under the rug and say, you know, we've done the best we can. This is not that kind of problem. I have veterans all over Missouri that walk up to me when I'm in the grocery store, that walk up to me when I'm at the mall, that walk up to me wherever I am and say, don't give up on fixing Arlington. It's too important to all of us. And I do not want this cloud hanging over Arlington National Cemetery. I have been honored to attend funerals at Arlington National Cemetery, and I want to compliment the Army for the job they do in terms of the honor guard and the dignity that those services embrace. But management has got a challenge here, and I want to make sure that this does not go off the radar screen in terms of a problem that has to be fixed. It has to be fixed because of the values that we embrace in this country. So I will look forward to the response from the Secretary of the Army. I will look forward to continuing to work with Catherine Condon and Patrick Hallinan, who I do know are trying, but this is something that I think we've got to continually be transparent about in terms of reporting to the public the progress we're making so that every family member and every American, when they go to Arlington National Cemetery, they don't ever have to wonder if they are showing respect to the hero at the gravesite that is identified on the marker. Thank you, Mr. President, and I yield the floor.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Mr. President.
The senator from California is recognized.
Mr. President, I take to the
Senator's
floor.
notified we're in a quorum.
I'm sorry. Yes, I ask unanimous consent that the quorum call be dispensed.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. President, I rise today and I'm staying close to the floor today because I'm very concerned that the Senate is going to vote on some very, I think, detrimental proposals for the American people that have to do with, for the first time that I can tell in history, telling the Environmental Protection Agency that they no longer can enforce the Clean Air Act as it relates to carbon pollution. We know carbon pollution is dangerous. We know it's insidious. We know that if, in fact, the EPA is stopped from enforcing the Clean Air Act, our families will suffer, they will get asthma, they will have more heart attacks and strokes, they will miss work days, and they will die prematurely. That is the primary reason I rise this morning. But I also want to take some time before I get into the details of that issue to talk about a real crisis looming in front of us, which is the possibility of a federal government shutdown. I have lived through a federal government shutdown, and I could tell you, whether you're someone who's trying to get on Social Security or Medicare, whether you're living near a toxic waste dump that suddenly doesn't get cleaned up, whether you're concerned about enforcement at the border, I could go on and on. There'll be a lot of suffering. And if you're a federal employee who works for a living, you will not get paid. So, Mr. President, for me, the issue is, if federal employees do not get paid, the issue for me is, if federal employees do not get paid, then why on earth should members of Congress get paid? We're federal employees. We work for the government at the pleasure of the people. Well, sometimes they're not so happy about it. They don't get much pleasure. But the fact of the matter is, we are elected and we work as U.S. senators, and our paycheck comes from the federal treasury. Why should we get paid if we fail to reach an agreement to do the basic work of keeping this government open? Now, years ago, when we faced this, it was with Speaker Gingrich who brought it on, and I hate to say this, but I'm very concerned that we're going to see a repeat from a Republican House again. And let me tell you the reason. We had an election, Mr. President, and boy, I know that. I noticed that one, 2010, because I was in it. And my Republican friends of the House are fond of saying, we won. They did take back the House. They did. They won the House. Guess what? They did not take back the United States Senate. The Democrats have a majority, a clear majority here. The president is still the president, and he's a Democrat. And people will have their say, and we'll get to that in 2012. But here's the point. There's three parts of the government that are involved in the budget showdown, in the budget dialogue. Those three parts are the House. We know where they are. They came up with $60 billion worth of cuts. And then you have a bill that they wrote, H.R. 1, that not only had $60 billion worth of cuts, but all these extraneous legislative riders that proclaimed that the EPA had to stop cleanup of the Chesapeake Bay, that the EPA could no longer enforce the Clean Air Act as it relates to certain types of pollution. They had other riders. No more money to Planned Parenthood, no matter the fact that they serve 5 million people and do cancer screenings and all the things necessary to help women's health and stop STDs and the rest. Oh, no, they're zeroed out. A vendetta against them, a vendetta against National Public Radio. That's what's in H.R. 1. So H.R. 1 was voted on here, and it did not pass. And now we are sitting down with our colleagues to try and work on the budget, not these extraneous riders. If you want to repeal the Clean Air Act, have the guts to come here, put it on the floor, send it through the committees. Let's see where you get. You won't get very far, and that's why they're trying to do it through the back door. But let's have a budget bill. Now, I believe that the Democrats, although we control two-thirds of the government, okay, third is the House, a third is the Senate, a third is the White House. We control two-thirds, are willing to meet them about halfway. Well, that's fair. That is more than fair. But we have rallies by the extreme right wing. They have every right to do it. I welcome them with open arms, but they do not speak for the majority of the people. So I want to get back now to why I think it is important that these members of Congress who are talking very openly about a shutdown, that they have some skin in the game. Let them have to suffer no paychecks. Why should others suffer no paychecks, whether you're someone who works at the parks or someone who works for Social Security or Medicare or someone who cleans up toxic waste sites or works on the border? There isn't going to be any penalty for them. So I can only say that it has been 30 days. Here it is, Mr. President. 30 days since the Senate passed a bill that said no budget, no pay. No raising the debt ceiling, no pay. That's what it said. And we sent it over there to the House, and what has Mr. Boehner done with that bill? Nothing. Now, he has plenty of time to talk about doing away with Planned Parenthood. He's got plenty of time to talk about, you know, all these things they want to do to harm women's health. They want to repeal the entire health care bill. The entire health care bill. I guess they want to now refund the money that they want to get back the money that the seniors got to help them pay for prescription drugs. I guess they don't think it's good to be able to keep your kid on your policy till they're 26. I guess they think it's fine for the insurance companies to kick you out when you get sick. Listen, he's got time for that. When it comes to saying we will not get paid if there's a shutdown, he has not taken up this bill. 30 days. And, Mr. President, I intend to be on this floor every day, 31, 32, 33, whatever the days. That was plenty of time. And, by the way, there is a bill by Congressman Moran. Now, what they said, Eric Cantor said, oh, we shouldn't get paid. So listen, Mr. President, I don't know if you know this, what they did. They wrote a bill that said, we won't get paid, but in that bill, it says H.R. 1 will be deemed having passed if the Senate doesn't pass it by April the 6th. So they have taken the most extreme bill in American history with cuts that experts say, Mark Zandi, a Republican economist, say, will lose 700,000 jobs, a bill that is so extreme that it tells the EPA they can't enforce the law, and then they attach to it the no budget, no pay. Not good enough. H.R. 1 is not passing. They can say they deem it passed. That's like my saying, I deem every bill that I write passed. I've written a lot of bills, the Violence Against Children Act. I could tell you the bills I've passed to give tax breaks to people who work at home. I have bill upon bill. I would love to say, if we don't act on it, I deem it passed. What are they talking about over there? It's odd behavior. It's odd. I don't know what else to say. So I say to the Speaker, and by the way, we have 15 people on our bill, and I'll tell you who they are: Casey, Manchin, Tester, Nelson of Nebraska, Bennett, Warner, Wyden, Coons, Harkin, Hagan, Menendez, Stabenow, Merkley, Rockefeller, and you, Mr. President, Sherrod Brown of Ohio. We're willing to say if there is no budget deal, we shouldn't get paid. And I don't know whether the American people understand this, but if they did, you know, I think they would really be very upset, because we have a special statute that protects our pay. Our staff isn't protected. To my knowledge, the people who work here are not protected. Members of Congress and the President are protected in the case of a shutdown. There's a special statute. They get paid. And all we're saying is that's wrong. If this government shuts down, that's wrong. Or if we fail to raise the debt ceiling and we start not making our payments and defaulting, and America goes into a cycle that we've never seen before, we don't deserve a penny of pay. And by the way, our bill says no retroactivity either. The American people have a right to expect us to work. Social Security checks must continue to arrive. Veterans must receive their benefits. Passports have to be issued. Superfund sites have to be cleaned. Oil wells have to be inspected. Export licenses must be granted. And our troops must be paid. And if we fail to keep the government open because of politics, because some group is rallying, I don't care what end of the spectrum they're from, if we cave to that kind of pressure, we don't deserve to be paid. Simple as that. We should be treated like any other federal employee, no better, no worse. Now, I'll tell you, similar legislation, this is so deja vu, because in 1995, similar legislation passed the Senate, but guess what? It never passed the House. Now, here we have a member of Congress complaining that he doesn't make enough money. Let's talk about that, everybody. In a video of Tea Party Republicans, let me take that back. In a video, Tea Party described Republican Congressman Sean Duffy of Wisconsin said he couldn't pay his bills on his $174,000 salary. Now listen, he has a lot of compassion for himself, but he doesn't seem to have that compassion for people who earn $50,000 or $60,000 or $40,000 or $20,000. A lot less than he makes, but he says it's real tough to live on $170,000. I know he has a big family. God bless each and every one of them. But let us not be so selfish. If you have compassion for yourself, have it for your fellow human being. No budget, no pay, Mr. Duffy. I'm sorry. If our colleagues over there who are very extreme, and I know there was a big article that Democrats are calling the budget proposals over there extreme. They are. If they're going to stand on that far-right line and hurt the women of this country, and hurt the families of this country, and hurt the children of this country, and hurt the seniors of this country, and they're not willing to meet us halfway when they only control a third of the government, and they don't agree, and this government shuts down, yes, Mr. Duffy, you should not get your pay. We need to have the same pain inflicted on us as is inflicted on others. Now, the Speaker can say anything he wants, and Eric Cantor over there, they can say whatever they want. Free speech, absolutely. But their actions speak louder than their words. When they say, oh, they don't think they should get paid, but they failed to pass a freestanding bill like we did, they're not serious at all. They put it in a bill that's ridiculous on its face. I never heard of passing a bill that says another bill is deemed law. It's hard for me to explain that. I mean, anyone who studies how the federal government works knows you pass these bills and then you send them to the president and then they're the law. What he says is, even though we already voted down H.R. 1, if we don't pass something else, H.R. 1 is deemed to have passed. And then it goes to the president. This makes no sense. It's a new way of passing bills that is made up by the Republicans in the House. So it's interesting that the members whose paychecks the Speaker is protecting are the same ones that are saying we should have a government shutdown. Today, we know the Tea Party is holding a rally demanding a government shutdown if H.R. 1, with all of its political vendettas against women and children and families, that in fact there ought to be a shutdown if H.R. 1 doesn't pass. Even though a leading Republican economist, Mark Zandi, said it would cost us 700,000 jobs. The Senate voted down H.R. 1. It only got 44 votes, folks. Wake up and smell the roses. It's gone. H.R. 1 will never rear its head again. So if you are rallying for a bill that only got 44 votes, that makes no sense. Why not rally to call on us to come together, to meet in the middle, to compromise? That's what the American people want. Do you think I want to meet the Republicans in the middle and slash the type of programs that we have to slash? No. I'm very unhappy about it, but I'm willing to do it for the good of the country. And then let the American people decide in the next election if these are the priorities that they share. H.R. 1 would kick hundreds of thousands of kids out of Head Start. It would stop tens of thousands from getting grants to go to college. How does that make us stronger? It doesn't. Tom Rooney, Representative Tom Rooney, a Republican from Florida, said, quote, "I don't see how we can avoid a shutdown." Well, I have news for him. We can, by working together, by crafting a budget where the numbers are right in the middle, and then any of these political vendettas, they should come back in form of other legislation. And Congresswoman Martha Roby said yesterday the Tea Party, quote, would not settle for a split-the-baby strategy, which I guess means she's not for compromising. It's my way or the highway. Now, I want to ask the American people rhetorically, is that fair? The people who run one-third of the government want 100% of it their way. Don't think so. Don't think it would work that way in a family. That's not right. You control one-third of the government and you want 100% of what you want. It's not right on its face. Now, 73% of the American people say a government shutdown would be a bad thing for our country. So when the Tea Party says shut down the government if we don't get 100% of what we want, they're out of touch. We will do our part. And I'm glad that Speaker Boehner is back at the negotiating table. But I got to say, we're not going to get anywhere if anybody says at that table, my way or the highway. That's over. This H.R. 1 is gone. And because you pass a bill that says if the Senate doesn't act and pass it, it's deemed law, sounds like an April Fool's joke. Today's the 31st. Maybe that's what it is, an April Fool's joke. Again, I don't know how they came up with this. So where we are is very clear. We're in a situation where we hope the government won't shut down, but yet there are members in the House who are threatening a shutdown. We have a situation where 30 days ago we passed no budget, no pay for members of Congress and the President, and they still haven't taken it up. And we sent a letter to Speaker Boehner. Do we have a copy of that? I will put that in the record, if I might, Mr. President. Can I ask unanimous consent to put this letter to Speaker Boehner in the record?
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you. So we call on him and we say, it's been 30 days. Let's get our act together. We need to feel the pain ourselves. like all the others, will feel the pain. And, Mr. President, the reason that I'm staying close to the floor today, more than any other reason, is the fact that for the first time in history, Congress is going to play scientist. Congress is going to play doctor. Congress is going to decide what to do in terms of enforcing the Clean Air Act. And this runs counter to the American people. Leading public health groups are saying, please don't stop the EPA from enforcing the Clean Air Act. They are the American Lung Association. I ask you, when you think of the American Lung Association, what do you think about? You think about doctors who want to help patients, who don't want to see little boys like this gasping for air. And it is our job to stand up for the health of the people. You know, if I ever had any other reason for being here, and I've been here a while, thanks to the good people of California, it's to make sure that our people are protected to the best of our ability. We look at Japan, at what is happening there, and we know how it felt when we had the BP oil spill and how we all did everything in our power to make things better. Well, one way we have made things better, Mr. President, over these years, since the Clean Air Act passed, and I'll show you a graph of Los Angeles. One way we have made things better for the people is the Clean Air Act. Now, we all know we don't always do things perfectly around here. We're only human and we make mistakes. But I got to say, I wasn't here when the Clean Air Act was signed. It was signed by Richard Nixon. I had a lot of issues with Richard Nixon on a lot of other issues. But Richard Nixon set up the EPA. That was a Republican effort. And now our Republican friends are literally taking a dagger to the Clean Air Act. The Clean Air Act is supposed to be based on science, Mr. President, not politics. If the scientists tell us and the health experts tell us that carbon pollution is a danger to our families, and they pass an endangerment finding, and the Supreme Court says once an endangerment finding is passed, you must act to clean up the air. If that's what happens, Congress should keep its nose out of it for two reasons. One, it will lead to little boys like that having to gasp for air if we interfere with the Clean Air Act. And two, it works. The Clean Air Act works. In this graph, I will show you that in 1976, there were 166 days in Los Angeles, Mr. President, where people were urged to stay indoors. There was a health advisory. When you can see the air, that's bad. And you could see the air on those days. That's what happened in the 70s. And through the years, because of the work of the Environmental Protection Agency and local people and state people who work with them, we wind up with no health advisories in Los Angeles in 2010. What an unbelievable record. And now members of Congress want to mess with that. It's ridiculous. If it isn't broke, why are you fixing it? It works. They say they're doing it because of jobs. It's going to cost jobs. Well, we know for a fact that that was the same thing that was said in the 70s, and we have the greatest track record of job creation. If you took the job creation from the 70s into 2010, if you looked at how many jobs there were created, it's huge. We've had, of course, some of the greatest expansions in our history, notwithstanding the fact that we had a very fine Clean Air Act in place. And guess what? When you clean up the air, you create jobs. You actually create jobs. There's no doubt about it. Clean energy businesses are created. We became the world leader in many environmental technology categories, and we are the world's largest producer and consumer of environmental technology goods and services. How proud are we of that? We should be proud of it. Instead, we may be facing a series of votes today or Monday, I don't know exactly when, that would in fact interfere with EPA's functioning. Some of them are worse than others. The McConnell Amendment is the worst of the worst of the worst. Guess what it does? It says forevermore the EPA cannot ever enforce the Clean Air Act as it pertains to carbon. So that is the worst of all. But all of them would stop the EPA in its tracks right now from enforcing the law. So look at the environmental technology industry, Mr. President. It's pretty impressive. We have 119,000 firms that generate $300 billion in revenues, $43 billion in exports, 1.7 million jobs. We have small and medium-sized companies that make up 99% of these private sector firms. And let me tell you, that's the issue. Because you've got small and medium-sized firms that want to see us keeping on cleaning up the air versus the very big old energy, big polluters, huge polluters, the chemicals, the oil, the coal, etc. Now, I want to work with all companies, small and large, because we are going to need a mix of energy sources. But it's got to be cleaner. And that's what the EPA has done over the years with its work. It's made sure that the industries get cleaner and cleaner. And every time they say, don't do it, we'll lose jobs, we'll lose business, we'll go into a recession, and the opposite has proven true. And in a letter dated March 29th, numerous clean energy and conservation organizations said, quote, stopping the EPA from doing its job now means more Americans will suffer ill health, and more clean energy jobs will be outsourced overseas, and fewer American jobs will be created at home. Now, health experts oppose amendments that weaken the Clean Air Act. They're against all of these amendments. They say these amendments would interfere with EPA's ability to implement the Clean Air Act, a law that protects public health and reduces health care costs for all. It's just an obvious point, Mr. President. If you never get asthma, your health is better, costs are lower. Simple as that. So everyone who's a leader on health care ought to understand when people get sick because you vote to weaken the EPA's enforcement of the Clean Air Act, that has a cost. It has a cost to these kids. I'll show you another picture of a little girl, beautiful little girl, suffering and struggling and gasping for air. That's, to me, the picture of what this debate is all about. Whose side are you on? Her side or the biggest, most powerful polluting industries in the country? It's a choice we have to make. And the Republicans in the House have taken the worst of these environmental bills and they've put them on H.R. 1, and they want H.R. 1, H.R. 1, H.R. 1. Pay back all the big polluters in the country who supported them. Now, you know, it doesn't make sense on any level, Mr. President. Doesn't make sense in jobs, doesn't make sense in terms of the health of our people, and it's politically unpopular. Let's take a look at a recent poll that was done. This was done all across the country by a Republican polling firm and a Democratic polling firm. And I'm going to show you what it came out with. 69% say the EPA Clean Air Act standards should be updated with stricter air pollution limits. People want cleaner air. They see their kids gasping. I said the other day, if you, Mr. President, go into any school in your state and ask the children, how many of you have asthma? Probably about a quarter of them will raise their hands. And if you say, how many of you know a child with asthma? It's about 50% of the crowd. And asthma is a very difficult condition. I listen to Senator Lautenberg all the time talk about how it is with his kid. He has a grandson with bad asthma. And the mother, every time she takes him to play a baseball game or she's away from home, she has to make a run to where is the nearest emergency room. This isn't a benign situation. It's a serious situation for children and adults. So that's why the American people are smart. They're saying, well, wait a minute. We want the EPA to clean up the air, and we don't want Congress involved. Look what they say, 68%. Now, mind you, this is taken in February 14th, February 16th. This is the height of politics in our country, fighting this side, that side. 68% believe Congress should not stop EPA from enforcing Clean Air Act standards. And 69% believe EPA scientists, not Congress, should set pollution standards. People are smart. If you've got a problem with a tooth, you go to a dentist. You don't go to a member of Congress unless they're a dentist. People know, scientists, doctors, they're the ones who should guide us on the Clean Air Act, not politicians. Look, I am proud of my work. I love what I do. And I think I know, I've learned quite a bit about a lot of things. But I don't decide what level of ozone is healthy, what level of small particulate matter in the air is healthy, what amount of radiation in the milk is okay. It's ridiculous. The experts have to determine it. But this Senate is about to vote on a series of amendments which will stop that in its tracks and say, we members of Congress know better. Now, EPA administrators under Nixon, Reagan, and George Bush opposed attempts to weaken the EPA. Listen to this. This is signed by William Ruckelshaus and Christine Todd Whitman. This is a quote from their op-ed piece. 2 Republicans. So I say to my Republican friends here, listen to the people who you respected when they were head of the EPA. What do they say? It's easy to forget how far we've come in the past 40 years. We should take heart from all this progress and not, as some in Congress have suggested, seek to tear down the very agency that the President and Congress created to protect America's health and environment. That is powerful. They went on to say, today the agency President Richard Nixon created in response to the public outcry over visible air pollution and flammable rivers is under siege. They're right. These 2 Republican former administrators of the EPA are right. EPA is under siege, not because it hasn't done its job. It has done its job magnificently. I've shown you. I'm going to show you the stats on how many premature deaths, Mr. President, were averted as a result of the EPA's action. I think it would stun you. The Clean Air Act in 2010 alone, Mr. President, prevented 160,000 cases of premature death. Now, by 2020, that number is projected to rise to 230,000. So I say to my colleagues on all sides of the aisle here, if you saw a child, maybe your child, maybe your grandchild, about to be run down by a car, and you knew you could save them, you would do it. You would save them. I'm telling you, my colleagues, we can save 230,000 people from facing premature death. That's a fact. That's what the science shows. And yet, we're going to weaken the very agency that can do this. 1.7 million fewer asthma attacks in 2010 because of the Clean Air Act. And if we keep going and we don't interfere with the EPA, by 2020, there'll be 2.4 million fewer asthma attacks. So let's take a look at that child again. Just either one of those babies here. So I'm telling you, Mr. President, I'm saying to America, and I'm saying to my colleagues, this is a baby who's struggling for breath. If you knew you could save him, if you knew you could save another child from this, you would do it. And by leaving the Clean Air Act alone, by letting the EPA do its work, it's a fact. It's not fiction. It's a fact that more than 1 million kids won't have to do this. I don't know any colleague, I don't know one, who doesn't love children, love their own, love everybody's, love their constituents' kids, love their grandkids. I hardly know anyone who doesn't talk about our kids, whether it's in the context of their debt or it's in the context of their health or it's any context. I am telling you, right here now, if you love our kids, don't support weakening the EPA, because our kids are the most vulnerable to dirty air. Why? Because they're little. Because the breath that they make takes up so much of their body. What they breathe in is more potent because they're so little and they're developing. So, you know, again, whether it's business groups, whether it's former EPA administrators, whether it's these incredible groups that have come together with nothing on their agenda except the health of the people. Groups like the American Lung Association, groups like the Physicians for Social Responsibility. This is I've given you a lot of facts to back up what I've said. And believe me, they're irrefutable facts. They are facts. The reason given for stopping the EPA from enforcing the law is, oh, it hurts the economy. I've shown you that that's the argument that's been made by big business forever, and it never was accurate. I guess they've stopped now saying that the EPA doesn't really have any success track, because I've shown you specifically how many early deaths were averted, how many asthma attacks were averted. I've shown you how many, let's go back to that again, how many missed days of work were averted. We have the facts, so they can't argue that. So what do they argue? Oh, it's a recession. Well, let me tell you something. If you want people to work, I've got news for you. If they can't breathe, they can't work. That's a fact. That's irrefutable. The Clean Air Act in 2010 alone, Mr. President, prevented 130,000 heart attacks, acute heart attacks. By 2020, it will avert 200,000 acute heart attacks. So again, I'm just saying, if you put yourself in the position of somebody who sees somebody almost being hurt, and you could pull that person back from the cliff, you could pull that person back and say, you're safe. Don't vote for these amendments, because we know it's our constituents that will suffer. In 2010, the Clean Air Act prevented 3.2 million lost days at school. Why is it? Because when a kid is gasping for air, they're not going to go to school. And that number is projected to rise to 5 million lost days at school. You know why we have these facts? Because those who were skeptical demanded that the EPA do the study. So we did the study, EPA, and we found. I would challenge, anybody in the Senate to show me an agency that can boast of this kind of result. It explains why almost 70% of the American people say to us, you know, keep your hands off the EPA. Don't mess with success. Let them do their job. Let them protect our health. Let them protect our kids' health. EPA has a great record. They're up against the biggest, most powerful interests in this country. They are. You know, they took a full-page ad yesterday, those big interests. Stop the EPA. Okay. I ask rhetorically, why would you stop an agency that is preventing the deaths of the American people? Why would you stop an agency that has this kind of track record? So I'll close with this. There's a series of these amendments, the worst of which is the McConnell, because the McConnell amendment says forevermore the EPA can never, ever, ever, ever do anything to protect our people from carbon pollution. And it says never, ever, ever can the EPA set standards for tailpipe emissions in automobiles. That's what it does. The American Lung Association, the American Public Health Association, the American Thoracic Society, the Asthma and Allergy Foundation of America, the Physicians for Social Responsibility, the Trust for America's Health, this is what they say about the McConnell Amendment. The McConnell Amendment would strip away sensible Clean Air Act protections that safeguard Americans and their families from air pollution. So who do we stand with? This is the question we all ask in our campaigns. Whose side are you on? Who do you stand with? So I've made a decision, a strong one. I'm going to stand with the kids. I'm going to stand with our families. I'm going to stand with these leaders who are working day and night just to protect our health. I'm not going to stand with a right-wing ideological amendment. I'm not going to stand with amendments that are McConnell light, because if it isn't broken, don't fix it. The EPA, no agency is perfect, we know that. EPA is not perfect, but the record is clear. The actions by the EPA, along with local and state officials, have saved countless lives. And if we leave our hands off it, they will continue to have a stellar record. And I'll be back on the floor when these amendments come up for a vote, and I just hope and pray that people will think about this very hard before they cast their votes. Thank you very much, Mr. President, and I yield the floor and note the absence of a quorum.